Chille DeCastro demands equal access to Hollywood area fires. Regrets it immediately. Run Dim literally bores his audience to tears for the sake of his documentary. Will it be a 5-star banger? Plus, BZ Watchdog takes the top spot in the crowdfunding race for Thursday. Who? All this and more on this edition of Auditing Insanity. Good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Auditing Insanity Newscast. I'm AI Johnny Jones, and I'll be your host for a combined edition of the Newscast for Thursday, January 9th and Friday, January 10th, 2025. Unfortunately, there's hardly anything going on this week. Between the cold weather and people in jail, there's literally nothing going on. We also think that the blow to the head has caused resident human helper Jim Finch go slightly insane. That's at least his story, and he's sticking to it. With that, let's see whatever he's come up with to write about today, as we ask you to focus on.
Delete laws demands equal press access to LA fires. It was a tale of two Chilles Wednesday afternoon into Wednesday night as Jose Chille DeCastro's two live streams from downtown Los Angeles compared and contrasted the stark differences he sees in himself between when he's on his own and when he is in the presence of police officers. DeCastro went live in early evening local time as he was standing in the middle of his street trying to obtain footage of the fires that have engulfed parts of the Hollywood area. He complained bitterly about the size of his audience, around 300 live viewers, and how going to a vertical format no longer helped grow viewership. Last year, primarily in the time after vertical format live streams were introduced by YouTube, i.e. when DeCastro was in jail, YouTube would artificially promote vertically formatted live streams into its algorithm and would often result in live streams reaching over 100 times the viewing audiences a normal stream would take in. On Wednesday, DeCastro's live stream was at 300 people in vertical format, maybe 20 to 30 more he'd normally get, but enough of a non-factor to launch a tirade into DeCastro being shadow banned and YouTube abusing his channel. At one point, he stated that he talked someone out of driving to YouTube and doing unspecified harm to the company. Ignoring, of course, his own quasi-threats to do the same back in 2023 and playing into the vast YouTube/Google China United States conspiracy against him that was keeping his channel from reaching thousands of people in every live stream like back in the old days. If we ignore the fact that there were never any old days where his numbers would crack the 1,000 mark and that most of his subscribers were allegedly purchased from services he can no longer afford, we may have bought into his hype, but, yeah. It was a standard whine playing into his recent doxing of his mailing address that later tied him to a food truck registered to that address. DeCastro lamented that because of the vast conspiracy between YouTube/Google China United States, he could no longer afford to support himself from his multiple YouTube channels and he was thinking about leaving YouTube for Facebook. Facebook would suddenly become his focus for a rebrand and a new home after he so spectacularly failed with a fourth YouTube channel, a move to Patreon, a move to Twitter and a move to his own private server since late October. Oh, and there were fires in the area. He stood in the road trying to get a shot of a fire on the horizon and was noticed by someone in a fancy car that wanted free merchandise. The man wanted it so much that he blocked traffic to park and wait while DeCastro slowly walked back to his car, ending his live stream. Somewhere in either the first or second live stream, DeCastro promised that his constitutional law scholar game would be done by the end of the month and for sale by February. He also had a second project that he couldn't talk about just yet. But it was coming! A few hours later, he was again near Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, his current stomping grounds. He described himself as being 3 or 4 miles west of the Hollywood sign and smoke was visible on the streets as he approached a street police had taped off. As he approached, a local news crew was allowed through the police tape. He attempted to follow the news crew into the restricted area. A police officer stopped him and said they were only allowing people with press passes through the line. 40 minutes of a classic DeCastro tirade later. Fine. You won't let us skip it. Contrary to what he had just said in his earlier livestream, DeCastro was now a media mogul who gets more views than the local TV crews. He ranted that it was illegal not to grant him access past the yellow tape because he was just as much press, with his cell phone in hand, as the local professional crew was, and that there was case law out of Texas that would back him up. He briefly caught his breath to make fun of everyone who was wearing masks or respirators, as he stated that none of that stuff was worth wearing as masks were all fake, y'all. Pulliam versus Fort Bend County, out of Texas. He screamed the quote at the unimpressed police officers manning the police tape. He demanded a sergeant because Pulliam versus Fort Bend County was case law and gave him the right to be press. For sure, amen, score. The case, of course, was a civil case from Texas involving a man claiming to be an independent journalist getting kicked out of a press conference by police as they did not recognize him as a local journalist. They threatened him with arrest if he didn't leave, though was escorted roughly 80 feet away from the press conference and was allowed to film from that spot. He was later arrested in a separate incident where he interjected himself on a scene where a man was having a mental breakdown. Pulliam obtained permission to film from the man's mother but was told to leave when the police arrived. When he refused, he was arrested, with Pulliam claiming the arrest was First Amendment retaliation for the previous incident. Pulliam sued in civil court. In September of 2024, he lost a summary judgment on his free speech violation claims related to the press conference as it was ruled that the police had qualified immunity. He also lost on the First Amendment retaliation claims. He won partial summary judgment in that it was found that the police acted improperly by ejecting him from the press conference as he was entitled to the same information distributed to the other reporters. A trial was ordered to determine damages. DeCastro spent 40 minutes in front of the crime scene tape debating with anyone who would listen to him that Pulliam was settled case law and that he damn well had every right to cross the tape since the police had let other journalists through. He didn't need a press pass, and he was going to get through the tape come hell or high water. A few minutes later, the requested sergeant arrived on scene. DeCastro went into his Daffy Duck-esque rant. The sergeant talked with him for a few minutes, let him through the line, and DeCastro celebrated his victory over the police on behalf of all citizen journalists. Then the smoke hit. Within a minute of DeCastro walking past the line, he began to breathe heavily. He didn't see much of anything as he walked towards the fire on the hill. As his breathing got heavier, he eventually found a police officer and asked if he could have an N95 mask. The officer complied. DeCastro took two, the extra being for his invisible friend who was supposedly accompanying him, and DeCastro proudly wore the mask he swore he'd never need. And he circled the block back to Hollywood Boulevard, out of the restricted area, and walked right back to his car, celebrating the First Amendment victory for the little guy. 40 minutes of protest. 10 minutes of getting access. 10 minutes of finding out access wasn't worth dying for. Such is the life of Chille DeCastro.
Denver Metro audits picks up more records requests. For what felt like the 10,000th time, YouTuber Christopher Denver Metro audits Cordova live streamed as he went to pick up a records request from Jefferson County, Colorado, which he claims is for his upcoming documentary about his 16 days of incarceration. Cordova was incarcerated for 15 days in federal prison last year after being found guilty of essentially ignoring signage and recording in a restricted area at a Social Security Administration building back in 2022. We've written about it before. It was the incident where he was insulting Jose Chille DeCastro behind DeCastro's back. DeCastro caught on to it, and DeCastro pulled a Bugs Bunny-esque prank where they'd both step through the threshold to enter the area that police said was off limits, and DeCastro stepped back as Cordova went forward. It was probably the one time we've ever cheered for something DeCastro has done, but that's digressing. Cordova was again there to pick up more footage for his big new project, a documentary about himself sitting in prison for 16 days. He's yet to really open up to the horrors that he faced while he was in the big house for such a long stay, other than the mattresses sucked and you couldn't steal a second mattress without being punished by the guards. He did threaten, at one point, to sue the federal government over the extra day he served, as it was awful to stay 16 days when he was scheduled for 15. But nothing of the sort happened on this video. Instead, he wandered into the facility, told the woman behind the glass partition that he was there to pick up documents. She asked for his identification. He freely handed it over. She gave him a thumb drive. He asked her name. She gave it to him, and that was essentially the video. He did add a minute or two of walking out and complaining how nice everyone has been to him in this process. He said they were probably trained or had meetings on how to handle him, as everyone knows what he is up to. At some point, he commented on the snow and how it wasn't too bad to drive in. He also claimed that the shadow ban was over and he was dropping banger videos over on his main channel. In at least one of the videos, he said he talked to a police officer and that video is worth at least 100,000 views to achieve that banger status. His beard is graying more and more each video. For a 40-plus-year-old who dresses like an extra from a Run DMC video from 1989, there really wasn't much here to report on. But at least it wasn't Reagan Benson, or a repost of his old videos where he would scream that someone was doxing him by using his first or last name, which he is currently uploading to his Denver Metro Audits 2.0 channel, folks. We'll continue to report on Cordova in case anything interesting happens in his world. Don't hold your breath on anything happening this month, y'all. Faux shizzle. BZ Watchdog takes crowd-sourcing title for Friday. A new contender has entered the fray in the fight for the top of the crowd-source fundraising market as unemployed former ride-sharing driver BZ Watchdog jumped into the lead for Thursday's crowdsourcing take. It's not much of a surprise here. BZ is desperate for money and has been holding near daily fundraising streams for a while now. Our human helper, Jim Finch, has even encouraged BZ to promote his GoFundMe campaign in the past, not out of admiration for BZ, but out of desperation of his own for something to write about in this column. For whatever reason, it seemed to have worked. BZ placed in the top 5 for Wednesday and then took the title for Thursday. It's not a huge victory for those who were hoping BZ and others get out of the First Amendment auditing field, but a minor victory for our human helper, who finally has something new to write about. BZ Watchdog is a Fort Worth-based First Amendment auditor, most famous for live streaming with passengers in the car while Ubering and talking to Michael Aline on one of many broadcasts where Aline substituted for DeCastro last year. Most recently, he's paired with Carolina in Fort Worth during her recent trial and brief incarceration. He was seen as the same person on panels featuring Harvey Freebird and Manuel Mata. While he shares their views, he's not as extreme as either man and can hold a conversation that doesn't turn into a "the police are after us. Back the blue until it happens to you, blah blah blah," like most of the auditors in his area. That said, there are times when he's a full-on zealot for both Michael Aline and Chille DeCastro. Your mileage will vary with his live streams. Wednesday's top 3 saw Liberty Troll take the top spot with a $35 take for the day. He was followed by the Angry Vet with a $20 donation and then BZ Watchdog with $15 in new donations. On Thursday, he jumped past everyone with $100 in new donations for the day, with $20 going to Craig Hendries to support Craig's work in second place, and no other observed donations for the day for any of the accounts we follow. Is BZ's big win a fluke, or is he here to dominate the market? We're not sure at this point. It's not like his live streams are setting the world on fire. He gets between 20 and 100 people in his streams at best, but this is the first time since Jose Chille DeCastro donated to his campaign last year that it's seeing any play. So we'll keep an eye on it moving forward.
Journalism is not free. Both ReallyCoolSite.org's daily newspaper and our daily newscasts are funded by your continuing donations and what we make from our YouTube AdSense revenue each month. If you'd like to contribute to help us keep the lights on, eating, keeping the cats fed, and writing new stories to feature on both the newspaper and newscast each day, we do have a GoFundMe set up at the address on screen right now. If you can't afford to contribute, please watch the advertisements on our videos, like, share, subscribe, and comment. You can help by doing next to nothing, and we thank you in advance for pitching in.
And we're back. Oh boy, was that a stinker of an episode. We're sorry for Jim Finch's writing. We're sure, with the right application of electricity to his extremities, he'll do better tomorrow. Remember, he'll be back tonight on his Not Another Freaking Jim livestream tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. where it counts, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. on the left coast. Be sure to check in on his insanity. With that, we got nothing more for you. Good night, everyone.